Welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for being here. Please hit subscribe, like, share. You are a boss if you do that. And if you're one of the 53% of listeners that is not subscribed, please hit subscribe because it really helps the show and helps us get guests like today's guest, Emily Weisband Tuscano, who as a songwriter goes by Emily Weisband if you were to Google her, but she is now Mrs. Tuscano. She is a Grammy-winning songwriter. She's had cuts with Camila Cabello, BTS and Halsey, Keith Urban, Tim McGraw, Faith Hill, Darius Rucker, Thomas Rhett, all the big country artists. She's just a phenomenally successful songwriter. But more importantly, she's an amazing human being. And today we get into some stuff outside of just the songwriter side, but we really go deep into her life the last 5 years and the journey that she has been on of ups and downs, great grief, great pain, but also great victory. You're in for a treat with Emily today. So here is Emily Weisband Tuscano. Roll the intro. Whoosh.
This is the Stephan Hogan Podcast.
Who is the Emily 5 years ago to the Emily at this moment?
This is so funny. This is such a funny question because I was thinking about this in the car on the way over here.
That, literally?
Yeah, that exact thing. Because I just was thinking about 2020, like January 1st, 2020, my husband dumped me. At the time, he was not my husband, so he's my boyfriend. But I'm very blessed. Like, I've had a very charmed life. And I don't mean that, and it doesn't mean I haven't had like hardship or hard days but there's just like, I think I was raised in a very safe household with parents who love me, like love me and empowered me to be myself. And like, there's not a day of my life that I haven't felt loved or held or cared about. And it's just given me the like freedom, or it gave me the freedom to be a very like starry-eyed person who just like really believes in myself. And, you know, my parents weren't like, here's how much money we have, you know, pick where you want to go to college or what you want to do, like based on that. It was like, it doesn't matter, like, what's your dream? And we want to help you do that. Like, we'll figure it out, you know? And so I moved here and, you know, it's not that I had an easy go of it, but I played a showcase my freshman year at Belmont and met my publisher there that night. And a year later, I was a songwriting intern. And then a year later, I signed a publishing deal before I even left college. And then a year and a half after that, I won a Grammy, like maybe a year out of college. And, you know, my publisher's my sister. And I work my ass off. Like, I'm a super hard worker and I have a very high standard when it comes to like the songwriting thing. Like I love excellence and I work for excellence and I'm a perfectionist, but I just like, and I had never experienced, I think what I'm trying to say is like up till 2020, I hadn't experienced much suffering that I didn't bring on myself, if that makes sense. Like I experienced suffering that was a byproduct of decisions I made or mistakes I made or like consequences for things that I did. Life hadn't really lifed yet, if that makes sense. I did a lot of things right and I was rewarded for that. And when I did things wrong, I suffered consequences for that. But there was always like, it's because I did something wrong, or like, it's because it was all just kind of a learning thing. And, you know, God was always there waiting when I realized what I did wrong and I could fix it. And so I think 2020, 5 years ago, so that's why it's funny that you're like 5 years ago. It's like, because 5 years ago, I think is when shit in my life really started to hit the fan as far as life really started lifing. And the suffering I was experiencing was nothing I did. It was out of my control. And that, I think, is when the wrestling with God like really begins, because I did everything right. And it still didn't go the way that I wanted it to. And, you know, it's just what you were saying about your parents and just that lack of control. Like, it was 5 years ago, my husband dumped me January 1st, 2020. So like, Happy New Year. At the time, he was my boyfriend. 3 months later, we get back together. And it wasn't like running back through a field with our arms extended, like reunited. It was, hey, like, I have OCD. I have a doubting disease. And the thing that I doubt is our relationship. And like, will you walk through that with me? Because I'm willing to put in the work and do the work. So me choosing it that was like difficult to navigate simultaneously. And I'm so happy we did, because of our conversation earlier about, you know, my marriage is so much more fulfilling than it would have been had we not had to learn love is a choice, not a feeling.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that, just because that combo happened before?
Oh,
this?
yeah.
To let people in, because we live in such a culture, like we were talking about, and I can't stand this. And my wife loves those like trash romance TV
yeah, I mean,
shows.
I do too.
Okay, and I'm gonna be honest.
And Dylan does too.
There may be part of me that really loves them too.
Yeah.
So like, I watch them with her. But it's always like, I feel like, or like, I just feel so this way, or I feel that. And that's the thing that sticks out. And me being married, like this year will be 9 years for me and Haley. Yes. And I'm always like, you're an idiot if you think that your love, like your relationship is going to be based off of feelings. Yeah. Like, you're in for a really rude awakening. Yeah. And I think it's why people on those shows all like don't end up together for the most part, you know, because they're bonded on feelings, not on fighting through things together. Mm-hmm. What did you have to fight through with your husband?
I mean, he just had OCD.
Which you didn't know he had.
Which you didn't know he had for, I mean, well over a decade. He just knew he had this pattern of dating people, and he'd get really, really anxious. He'd have these intrusive thoughts about, you know, them not being the right one for him, or, you know, are they this enough? Are they this enough? And I think, you know, OCD, it's a coping mechanism for severe anxiety. And I think you're only anxious about the things that you care about. So one of the things my husband wanted in life more than anything was to be a husband and a dad and be married. And so I think, and, you know, it's his story to tell, but he had a interesting upbringing when it came to religion and stuff as well, that I think kind of really impacted his perspective on what the one was. But I think like growing up in church, I mean, I grew up in as I was telling you, like a very open, free, like we loved Jesus and we valued a relationship with Jesus, but I wasn't raised like super overly churchy, you know? But even me, like, I think the message to my generation in church was, if you're a good boy or good girl, God has this perfect one for you out there. And
100%. Yeah, youth groups done kids real bad disservice.
I mean, yeah, it's like, and the sky will open up one day and God will say, this is the one. Yeah. And then you'll know, like, you know, and you hear sayings like, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. If it's not blah, blah, blah. And it's just, I think it's no one's fault, but I just think our generation has been bred to have certain expectations about what finding the one is going to be like. And I'm not even sure I believe in the one. Like, I think there's hundreds of people in the world that you could be happy with and have a really happy life with.
Because it's a choice.
Because it is a choice. And it's so interesting to me how like God made all these people, and then his last little thing he did was install a mechanism in us where we have the option to not love him, which is like so funny to me because if I made a bunch of people, they're loving me. Like they're not getting the option to not love me. And so I think that alone speaks to God's honor for decision making and like for our ability to make a decision. And I think that's what sets humans apart from animals, is that we get to choose when to stop eating. We get to choose who we love. We get to, choose to be monogamous. Like there's just all these things in life where we have domain over that, other species of things that live don't. And so I think that's what makes us godlike in a lot of ways. You know, that's it's one of the things that, makes us like in his image. And so I think it's easy. It's not, it just takes there
was a lot of choosing for you and for him.
Yeah.
In that process.
Yeah. I mean, like OCD will tell him like, oh, I had fun with my friends when she was on this trip, so I must not have missed her enough, which means she's not the one, because if she was the one, wouldn't I be like obsessed with her and longing to have her back in my arms? And I wouldn't want to be hanging out with my friends. I'd want to be hanging out with her.
Yeah.
Which all the books and movies and songs would, or in church even, would tell you, but, or like, oh, I didn't, her morning breath really bothered me today. If I really loved her, wouldn't that like not, I wouldn't care. Even when someone has OCD, like little intrusive thoughts like that are huge and they're just reality. And what it did was we kind of had to, it's hard to talk about because it was such a nuanced dance that we had to learn. There's nothing black and white about it, but he basically, the key to his growth was exposing himself to the things that made him anxious, which was me in all my glory, good and bad, And the key to my growth, because my habit, and that's the other thing, is like it shined a light on the things I needed to grow in and like my ego. It wasn't just about like him and his anxiety, but like the key to my growth was not changing myself or dimming myself to keep the peace with the person that I was dating. So he had to expose himself to me and I had to be who I was. And I remember one day he told me, he was like, I need you to trigger me. Like, I need you to. You can't be precious with what you think is going to make me anxious. Like, you just have to fully be yourself. And I have to like, if something makes me anxious or makes me have a thought about whether or not you're the right person for me, like, that's my problem. And we had to learn, like, he didn't have to tell me every thought that went through his brain. It wasn't, I didn't have to carry that around with me. Like he was going to talk to me if something was actually something that was fixable and something that we actually needed to like work on and grow in. But by no means was our dating life like rainbows and like fun. Like I would say we have more fun now than we ever did when we were dating. Yeah. So it's like, there was a lot of my ego that had to die and like my expectations of what meeting the one, because I had my own, like, my dad's obsessed with me. My dad would never not like the way that I don't know. And I think girls tend to like project their dads onto the men they date. Like, it's not everybody. I don't want to like generalize too much, but like, I do think it is a thing. And so it was just like, the one to me was always going to be this like white knight on a horse who loved everything about me and was obsessed with me and swept me off his feet. And it's just like, No, he didn't come in that package. Like he came in the package of this like wonderful, respectable, handsome, hilarious, awesome person who had like major anxieties about me and actually wasn't sure about like a lot of things about me, you know? And so like his ego had to die about what he thought love was going to be like, and mine had to die. And that was extremely uncomfortable, like really uncomfortable. And to be honest, like it's one of the best things I've ever done is marrying him. But I definitely had beef with God about like, really? Like, wow, dream come true. Like, why is this happening to us? You know, why can't we just have like a normal, and now I look back on it, I'm like, in no universe would I want normal. Like we are who we are because of what we've been through. And I'm not worried about being 50 with this person and him cheating on me because he doesn't feel it anymore. Because it's never been about what he feels. It's about, you know, someone asked him, like, the question isn't, is this girl the right one for you? It's, can you grow love with this person? Like, can you grow attraction with this person? And his answer to all of that was yes. And so it's like, I think it just, yeah, I mean, that was the beginning of my 2020. Simultaneously, I'm like dealing with I had signed like a record deal, and you know, when the world shut down, I mean, that alone, I think was just like Twilight Zone. I don't even think I realized like how traumatized we all were from going through something like that, like in real time.
When did you sign?
I signed in 2018, but my music started coming out end of 2019 into 2020. And so when the world shut down, like I was a newly signed artist on this label, and TikTok started blowing up, and I didn't sign up for the whole artist thing. Like I would not have signed up for that if I knew TikTok was like part of the equation. I just like, I don't have that dog in me to like do social media. And I think like, you know, there were some other things too that I think at the end of the day, I just realized like, yeah, I don't think this is like worth it. I don't want this enough to like do all of this other stuff. Like the thing that drew me in about doing the, you know, putting out music and signing a deal was that I felt like I had a story to tell and something to say, and I had an opportunity to do it. And it was kind of one of these things that I felt like it chose me more than I chose it. And I prayed really hard about it. And I was like, God, is this what you want me to do? And just all the lights were green. And so I kind of took that as like, okay, I guess my life's about to change because I'm just green light, green light, green light, green light, green light. And so I'm like, okay, cool. And then as soon as I got into it, it was like all the lights turned red. And then I kind of had to go like,
What was the first red light?
The guy at the label who signed me left the label. So, and he was my champion in the building and the only one who like really got me, I think, and like really knew me. And then the next red light was that my manager was my sister, and she told me that she didn't want to do it anymore. Like basically my whole support system that I walked into it with like started kind of dropping like flies. And then I was just kind of left with a label who like didn't get it and like didn't really care to.
Did they make decisions and try to mold you into something that you felt like you weren't?
Yeah, for sure. And I don't say that in like a victim-y way or in like a F them kind of way. It was all a learning lesson. And I think, you know, I've done other podcasts like going into like major detail about it. So, but I mean, yeah, I look back on like my artist stuff and I can't say I'm like, I cringe when I look back on it because I know that it's a Frankenstein, Picasso creation of like what I wanted and who I was and what satisfied other people. And then I got with some management who they're great people and, you know, they've worked out well for some other artists, but they just weren't a fit for me. And I think we valued some things differently. And I just felt like brought into this place and then just abandoned in it. I think my beef there was really with God, because I was like, I felt like I followed you into this place that I actually wasn't interested in going until I felt you leading me there. And that's what made me interested in going. And now I'm here, and all of my resources have left me. And now I'm just like wandering in the wilderness. So it was very like.
So then that's part of that. So we're back to our 5 years of getting dumped 2021, working through
the OCD stuff.
The OCD stuff. And then in the midst of that, you had put out music, but it takes a while for things to happen sometimes. And music got put out.
Yeah.
Or
did
you end up, because I'm just like, I don't know the story.
Yeah.
I don't need to know the whole story. And I like to go in, like I was telling you, not knowing too much. I'd rather discover it from you than someone else. But when did you leave that label?
I think I left that label in 2021, like end of 2021.
Okay. So that was a little time and a part of that process. So were you back with your now husband at that point?
Yeah, we got back together like a week before the world shut down.
Okay.
For COVID. So we got back together.
So you guys were together.
We were together, but we were navigating
a lot.
Stuff. Yeah.
And then in the midst of that, was it a label drop or was it a decision where you're like, peace?
It was kind of like a combo. Like I remember I got new management and they were like, I think I had some time left on my deal. And I mean, if we're just calling a spade, like I told them like, this label doesn't get me. They're not interested in like, they just don't give a shit. Like, and it's fine. It's like the nature of labels sometimes. Like if at the end of the day, I'm a line item to them. So like if I'm not going viral, and also in that current landscape, it's like, I'm not going viral on TikTok every day. And that's the thing. Labels started being interested in that moment. And the world was shut down. So I wasn't touring. Like there was just like, I was a brand new artist with like no numbers, and like it just didn't, they didn't care because I wasn't making them like any money. And so it's like, it's fine. I'm not saying in a victim-y way or in like a F them way, but it's just like, it is what it is. And I knew that. And it was just so like soul depleting to me. And I just remember telling my management, like, I just don't think like this label thing is working out. And like, do you think that we could talk to them about just like calling it? Like, they don't care anyway. So like, let's just talk to them. And so I think my management like reached out to them. And I think the head of the label at the time, from what I remember, was like, let me look into it and think about it kind of thing. And then we didn't hear back for like a few months. And then they sent like dropping papers. So it was like, it wasn't just like I was really fighting for it and wanting it. Yeah. And then they were like, hey, we're dropping you. That conversation never happened.
Was it a relief?
Yeah. I mean, I was in the dumps for sure. I felt like a failure. I felt really defeated, but I simultaneously felt really relieved that I didn't have to like deal with it anymore. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, like the head of that label, like never called me. We never had a conversation. So, I mean, to be honest, and I'm just calling a spade. Like I'm not.
That's what we like here.
I mean, yeah, like it just was further confirmation that like I did the right thing.
Yeah.
Cause like they didn't care.
Cause to me,
they didn't even care enough to call me. So it was like,
yeah, that's gnarly.
I probably should be like telling him that instead of like talking about it on a podcast. But I mean, I'm not gonna call someone who didn't comment. Like it's whatever.
Yeah.
And now it's been like years, but I mean, yeah, it was just it was just kind of like, okay, yeah, I definitely did the right thing. And then I tried the independent thing for a while and I just hated everything about it.
I have an obsession, and that is with really cool leather stuff. And I found a company a while ago just searching on Instagram for cool leather bags. And there was a backpack that caught my eye. So I got the backpack. Well, now me and Korchmar have collaborated on a partnership through this podcast to where you, the listener, You get 15% off. If you just go to korchmar.com and you type in SHP at checkout, you're going to get 15% off. So KORCHMAR.com, and then just enter the discount code SHP. It's that easy. But they have backpacks, computer bags, travel bags. They have those little bags for like when you're traveling, you put your stuff in. They've got gun cases that you can get customized with, like mine says MMP for one of my guns. They have coasters. I mean, anything. Like this is great for women looking for a gift for their husband, or men that are just looking to get a high quality, made in the United States product that they're not going to have to replace. Because here's the thing, this company's been in business since 1917. They're a 4th-generation owned company here in the United States. That's very rare. We need to support U.S. businesses. And I'm just a big proponent of quality over cheap. So if you're going to get something nice that's going to last. And 15% off goes a long way on this website. So korchmar.com, SHP for the Stephan Hogan Podcast. Now we're going to go back to our interview with Emily.
I hated everything beyond writing a song I cared about in the studio, because at the end of the day, the ones I cared about anyway, my teams like didn't care about. They were like, oh, it's not what's working on TikTok right now. So it's just like, it's fine. Like I genuinely like am okay with it. Like there's not a day where I'm like, I really wish I was an artist again. It was just kind of like,
well, and
ooh, I don't want this enough to like.
You are an artist though. I just like, I know.
Creators are like in their own way, but I just, as far as like
what we call in Nashville, an artist.
Yeah. Like, or just it being like my thing. Exactly.
Yeah.
I just like, I couldn't do it. I love making music and I started hating making music, but I just felt like, so anyway, I ended up like parting ways with the management as well. And we're still cool. Like I saw one of them a couple months ago in a restaurant. We had a great talk. But it's just like, you know, I think that for me, I left that management, like we parted ways around the same time that I got married. And so I was like, you know what? It's a new chapter. It literally felt like I got knocked on my ass like over and over again for like 3 years, just like uphill battle. Everything was an uphill battle. And then I finally just like released and rolled back down the hill and said, I'm not fighting this battle anymore. Like I'm going to conquer a new land somewhere. And I got married and I went back to like just writing songs in Nashville. And I was like, okay, this is a new season for me. This is exciting. And then there was, sorry, I get emotional about it. And that's when like a whole new season of like a whole different grief hit me. And so, yeah, that's when I started losing babies. And work was going well, but it just like not in the way I wanted. It's like, I remember at one point, I had like 7 singles at country radio, and I was like, this is my redemption from these last few years of things just not going the way I wanted them to. And, you know, I'd lose a baby and a week later I'd find out I lost a single, you know, and it just was like that for the next like year and a half. So it's just like, it felt like a really long winter with like no relief. You know, like it's like, and the part of my life that was going well was like my marriage and the fact that, you know, my parents moved here to Tennessee to where I could like hang out with my family. And so I almost felt like even guilty for being mad about some of these things like not working out, because the one thing that at the end of the day matters, which is like having people you love and, you know, being able to have dinner with your parents. Like I could do that. So, and that's like such a blessing and a gift.
But it doesn't discount the hurt and
work
the pain.
Was just like, it was just like, it just felt like so much loss.
Yeah.
Like
you're just getting pummeled by wave after wave, and you can barely come up for breath.
Nothing I do.
Yeah.
Like as soon as I get pregnant again, I lose that baby too. Or as soon as I get another, and then, you know, 2 weeks later, single failed, we're pulling it. It's like, God, I can't, like, do I get to celebrate anything?
Yeah.
You know, there was like, it was just like, and it was hard too, because I think, and my husband and I have talked about this a lot, but I think like I very much had to step into this like masculine space a little bit with the OCD stuff, because, you know, I wasn't struggling with anxiety about our relationship. So I kind of had to be like the confident one, you know, while my husband was navigating the OCD stuff. And I had to be like, I had to step out of like this like feminine space and step into this like masculine, like sturdy oak kind of role. And then at work, I'm having to be a businesswoman and figure this out. And so once again, like just living in this just like masculine space. And then
did you want to be in the feminine space? Like,
yeah, I think I longed for that.
Yeah.
Just like to be able to be like soft and vulnerable and then I started getting pregnant and I started losing babies, and that did not make me feel very feminine. So I think it just like...
So there was a huge component of just feeling like a failure.
Oh yeah. Just like an all around loser.
Yeah.
You know, just...
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and I know it's not true. And I'm going to be honest, like, my season of grief is, as far as like it actively, it's over, you know, but, you know, grief, it's weird. It like catches up to you and
yeah, there's no
in
rules.
Weird ways. Yeah.
There's no
like,
rules about grief.
I'm so happy right now. Like I was happy all morning. I was like, ugh. I'm in a very happy season of life.
But it's in your body. Sometimes it just comes out.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's part of your story. It's part of who you are. And it's okay to grieve. It's okay.
Yeah, I just think like, and then with the God stuff, it's like...
Yeah, where were you with that? Were you like, what are you doing? Like,
I mean, yeah, it's just like, I just don't know if I can actually trust you. Like, every time I got pregnant, it was like, okay, God, I trust you with this baby. And then every time I lost it. And so it was like 3 and 9 months. It was like, I don't know if I can trust you with the babies anymore, you know? And like, I show up to work every day and I've always tried to like do it right. Like I've always tried to play the long game. I don't like chase after like stupid shit, like, or big shit. Like I've always just tried to like work honest and be good at what I do and let what's mine come to me. And I've just like, I'm very proud of the way that I've navigated my career, because I've navigated it in a way that I'm proud of, like in an honorable way. And like, at the end of the day, like I stand on my gift and I stand on my work, you know, like I'm not into shady shit. I'm not into like going after stuff that is not mine to go after. Like I know the things that are meant for me will come to me. And I've always just tried to do this job like with like a long game mindset. Like I don't. And so anyway, like I think it was just very frustrating for me to be like, God, I've just done everything right. And I just can't win. Like it just, I don't know. And it's funny because some people would be like, but you have one. Look at your career. It's really successful. But it's just like, you know.
But what is the metric for success?
Well, exactly.
Is it singles? Like, is it songs?
I think
for some people.
For writers, it's like number ones. It's hits.
Yeah.
It's like songs that, you know.
But a more macro perspective, like if you really zoomed out, like for me, one of the things I learned through losing my parents is that I remember making a video right after I lost my mom, because my mom passed on the September 23rd and my birthday was 7 days later on the 30th. And I remember making a video saying that I've realized that the only thing that truly matters is family and the relationships. And that was like a transformative time for me. Yeah. Do you feel like you went through that same thing where it kind of was like redefined what success was?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. If, back to your original question, like Emily 5 years ago and Emily now has a very different definition of success, for sure.
Yeah. What is success now?
Success now is having enough to live and getting to do what I love every day, but more importantly, getting to build a family, like go home to people who love me and people I love, and eating and drinking and being married with them.
Mm-hmm. In that, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I would say family is kind of just everything to me. Like a good marriage, a marriage where I'm friends with my husband, and he's my teammate, and growing that, like building that relationship. That's success to me. Being married till the day I die is success to me.
Yeah.
Like,
And I don't think that you would view it that way had you not had that year and a half.
No. Even music, like I care about music less than I ever have in the last, I would say 6 months of my life. Like, it's truly, and I think I've said this before, and I only half meant it when I said it before, but I fully mean it now. It is what I do. It's not, I would say I'm a songwriter in the way that it's how I communicate with the world, through words and through melodies. It is who being a creator is who I am. The same way King David was a creator. It was part of his identity. But the music industry, my job and my success in the music industry, or, what goes right or wrong, that, I have nothing to do with that. And that message has been very clearly sent to me. And I accept it and I receive it and I'm relieved by it.
So there's surrender.
Yeah. I think Emily 5 years ago thought that if she did everything right, she'd get everything she wanted. And I think Emily now just knows that every day is a gift. Any kid I have is a gift.
Mm-hmm.
My marriage is a gift. The songs I write, I'm just kind of used to bring them into the world, but
you're a vessel.
I don't really have much to do with them. I don't even remember them half the time. When I go home, I'm like, that was a blur. Yeah. I don't remember what I wrote today.
Yeah.
So, and it's yeah. And I think time too tells you, you can't see in the moment all the good that's happening when you're going through hard things like that. But I'm finally being able to look back on the last 5 years and go wow, I'm okay.
And you wouldn't be
God's
who you are now.
Actually genuinely provided for me and all of that. This sounds really weird and I don't mean it in any kind of a way, but last year was a horrible year for me. I just felt I was in the twilight zone. It's such a blur to me. And we sat down with my business manager at the beginning of this year and he was like, I know it was a bad year for you personally, but you made the most money you've ever made last year. And I don't say that in any kind of a way. I just say like what felt like failure to me, like it didn't matter how I felt like God was providing for me that entire year. You know? And I couldn't see it then. But even now I look back on that and I go, wow, thank you. If I thought what I made last year would be based off of what was happening in my life or how I felt or what I felt like I was achieving or succeeding at, then I would think I'd had like $10.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What was
But
your
it's
metric
just-
for success?
What do you mean? Like last year?
Yeah.
Getting through every day.
Because of
Still like kicking.
grief?
Yeah, I had no goals last year.
Because you've just been ragdolled by wave after wave.
Yeah, I had no goals. The goal was
Did that feel good to have no goals, or did it feel
No.
terrible?
I mean, I just was in survival mode, you know? And like last June, I think it was right after we lost our third baby. And I found out that I had basically like an undiagnosed like autoimmune disorder. And it was caused by a lead, like heavy metal lead buildup in my body. And so my last 6 months of the year last year were detoxing from heavy metals and spending days in this like detox clinic. And
Did they do the thing where they filter your blood?
I didn't do like chelation, like they didn't hook me up to blood, but it took 6 months and they like, I did hand baths and foot baths and like ionic, like battery baths and stuff. And I took all these supplements and I did all these treatments, and it just like, you know, just hoping that what I was doing would work as far as like me being able to fix the reason I was losing babies. I mean, even now I look back on it, I'm like so thankful there was a reason. I think that would have been even harder to like find out like there's no reason. It just has been, you know, like, and even that I can look back and say like, wow, when I do have babies, they're going to have a healthy mom.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So even that I look back on and I'm like, thank you. I was driving here today, like thanking God for my miscarriages. That's like not something I thought I would ever do like in the moment.
But you didn't see the other side, which was he's going to use that to help you find that you have this autoimmune issue. Mm-hmm. So it's like the bad is used for good and there's redemption.
It's always used for good.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes years sometimes. I mean,
yeah. And we don't
winters are long sometimes,
yeah,
but
winters
time
are
will
long.
always tell.
Yeah.
It always will. And I to be honest, I just think like I'm still young. I mean, I'm 31. You know, like just 5 years ago, I was 25, worried about turning 30. Like, that's really not that long. Like, it's really not that long in the grand scheme of like, of life. And someone said to me years and years ago, like not related to this, they were like, God, we look at each other as a fixed point on a line. Like all we can see is who we are right now in this moment. Like when I look at you right now, all I can see is like who you are right now in this moment. But like God looks at us and he doesn't just see a fixed point on a line. He sees everything before this moment and he sees everything in front of this moment. And so it's cool to think that even in the moments where I was like, fuck you, God, like, how could you do this again? Like, take another baby from me. He wasn't worried about, he didn't care. Like, he wasn't worried about, oh no, she's mad at me. Like, I think to him, it was like, I get it. It sucks, but I see you 5 years from now and you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And there's going to be too much, like so much fruit that you'll be thanking me for this moment. And so I just think like with everything I've been through in life, like time always, I just think time is so, it's like everything, just giving things time and knowing that like, just accepting the moment you're in and finding beauty in these, like sometimes last year, the most beautiful thing about my day was like the steak my husband made on the Traeger. I'm like, wow, the steak's really good.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes that was the most like celebratory worth thing of the day was that the steak turned out good.
Yeah. And that's okay.
Or that I got a Poppy at the gas station and took a drive. And that was like a nice addition to my drive.
Yeah.
You know, and I think like, that's why when you're young, you're like, oh yeah, like all this stuff like is so cool. And that's why old people are like, yeah, that bird is really cool. You know what I mean? Because I think it's because of this, because like people who have lived life and let time do its thing, you're different. They've gone through grief. They've gone through losing things or through doing everything right and realizing that at the end of the day, like life happens and there's this weird dance of like God doing his thing and also letting life happen to us, you know? And so, yeah, sometimes like, I think when I see my grandma just enthralled with the bird, I'm like, she's got it right. Like, you know what I mean? Cause it's like, or my husband's grandma just like loves sitting in her chair, like listening to nothing, like just sitting in silence, like loves it, you know? And it's like to get to a point where life stripped you of so much that you can find like joy and beauty in sitting in silence or in a animal that's probably riddled with like diseases. It's like, you know, that's beautiful. I think that's like I think it's the goal.
It is. I wrote in my
I'm
journal.
thankful this is all happening to me. I feel like it's transforming me into my final form.
No, it's just part of your story. It's beautiful.
Sorry, I didn't realize I'd like cry this whole freaking time.
No, I love that you feel like you can share your story because I just, and I never, ever, ever want to make this podcast about me, but I just relate to what you're saying a lot because of going through like grief and loss and not understanding in the moment the outcome. And even right now, you said like the steak was the best part of your day. And for me, just in full transparency right now, like I remember yesterday, I was like, I have a therapy appointment at 10:30. I have a chiropractor appointment, 11:45. And if I can do those two things, then I made it through the day. Mm-hmm. Because having just lost my dad. So it's like all that like compounded trauma that you've experienced as well. And I feel like we don't talk about the fact that it's like, yeah, I'm like wearing cool clothes right now or something, and I'm on a podcast interviewing a hit songwriter, but also I feel broken too, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay to not be okay. But what you said about your grandma hit me because I wrote in my journal last week. I love to journal. It really helps me process. I wrote, like I was sitting doing nothing. I felt bad about it. And I wrote, why do I feel bad about this? And it was because I wasn't producing. Mm-hmm. And like, I feel like I need to be doing something and creating something and making something. And if I'm not, my metric for success is how much did you do during the day? Mm-hmm. By the end of the day, it's like, oh, I can lay down and be like, I did this, this, and this. And that's my metric for success. And then I was like, I came to the conclusion that your grandma has come to, which is maybe doing nothing is doing everything. Mm-hmm. Like maybe that's what we're meant to do. Yeah. Is a lot more sitting in the quiet, watching the birds. Like maybe the ancient philosophers and people that looked at the stars, and the Stoics did a lot of nothing, but they did a lot of thinking. And we live in such I said this in my last podcast, but hustle culture is just such a thing.
Yeah.
And when you go through the traumas, it realigns your entire outlook on existence and what's important and what's not.
Yeah.
And I think it changes relationships in a way where you view them in a new light. Do you feel like you've realized the importance of relationship now more than ever with the people that are in your life and the people that you work with?
Yeah. I mean,
do you think relationships are pretty much the currency of what you do for a living?
Yeah. I would say like songwriting is such a relational. I mean, you're sitting in a room with people, being vulnerable with them and creating something, and to create is to bare your soul, you know, and dare to suck and share your brain and all the things in it with each other. And but I think I've always valued my relationships in life. I've always been like someone who like was a deeply attached person to the people that I choose to like love in my life. I think what the last 5 years has really done is just given me like more capacity for empathy and compassion. I would say that's probably what it's really done. I mean, I think...
But would you go back and tell that Emily 5 years ago on January 1st?
Oh, I mean, my whole definition of love is like changed. I mean, I was making out with boys in Red Door 6 years ago, and now I'm like staring at cardinals in my backyard. Like, you know, I'm so like deeply committed to my husband and my marriage, and I just like my complete understanding and like perception of love has shifted for sure.
What would you say it is
but
now?
I don't, what?
What would you say it is now?
Well, I mean, it's kind of what we were saying. Like, I think love is something love is showing up and like choosing. And I think love is boundaries, which I don't think Emily 5 years ago would have said or thought. Love is like drawing a line sometimes and protecting your space and your energy so that you can best love that person instead of just like letting them drain everything out of you. I think love to me was like sacrificing everything and like being easy to love and like, you know, keeping the peace and just not ruffling feathers and letting people just like, you know, inconvenience you and inconvenience your feelings and your emotions so that, you know, they can have some sense of like control or happiness that makes them feel good. And I think like I've learned love is saying no sometimes.
Yeah.
Or saying, yeah, that's your thing. Like, I'm not going to take that on, you know?
Yeah.
I think I've learned that loving someone is like a gift. I keep going back to this gift thing. Like, and I'm excited for what I know I'm going to learn about love in the future. Because the reality is like, I haven't held my newborn baby yet, but I felt the grief of losing a baby I didn't even know. And if grief is only like love, then I had a lot of love for someone I didn't know. So I can only imagine that will translate into love for someone I will know.
Yeah.
So I think another thing I've learned about love is that like, I have a lot more ahead of me, that I haven't experienced yet.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, I mean, if we're boiling it down to like the last 5 years, I would say I've learned love is having boundaries and love is choosing and showing up and staying. And it's not always about how you feel.
Yeah. I like that you said love is having boundaries, because for a long time, I didn't know what boundaries were. Like, I didn't even know what that word meant until about 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And no one taught me what a boundary was.
Yeah.
And I'm an empath, so I had no boundaries. Everybody was coming into my turf.
Yeah. I mean, my husband's helped me with it a lot because...
Well, what I was going to say about it is, because you said love is boundaries, but it is, and I wanted to say what my definition of it, because I don't know if this is yours, but I think in order for us to love others, we have to love ourselves first. And I always think about the 2 greatest commandments in the Bible, which is love God. I always thought it was like, love God, love people, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Peace and love. It says love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And I read that and I had this realization. I was like, I am not loving myself at all. Actually, I'm doing the opposite. I am at everybody else's expense, destroying myself. And I have 0 boundaries. So how am I going to love my neighbor if I treat myself terribly? So in fact, his 2 greatest commandments is love him and be able to love your neighbor. So I'm actually failing at that pretty hard on the second part because I don't have the boundary part in there. I'm curious, when you say boundaries is part of love, because it is part of my new definition of love. What does that look like? What's an example of that for you?
Well, it's funny because my husband is the one who's really helped me with boundaries, even encouraging me to have boundaries for him. Like honestly, one way love as a boundary has manifested itself is letting my yes be yes and my no be no. Because I think in the past I've been like, yeah, sure, like that sounds great, just because I don't want to, I'm trying to appease, but I don't actually mean that. But I'm just afraid to say no because I don't want to be mean, or I don't want to, I'll just be like, yeah. And then this person just ends up thinking I'm like flaky, or I end up avoiding them because my yes wasn't an actual yes. And so when it's time to like pay the piper, like I'm not ready to pay. And then that kind of, in my brain, I'm loving them by just like saying yes and making them feel good and keeping the peace. But actually, the more loving thing is for me to be like, no, I don't think I'm into that.
Yeah.
And like not having to explain why, but just like, no, I don't want to.
Yeah.
And it's such a small little thing. But my husband, like, he's been like, hey, I respect you a lot more for saying, no, I can't do that, than telling me like, yeah, you can do that, and then not doing it. He's like, I respect it so much more when you just say, no, I'm not into that. It's like, okay, great. Sweet. You know what I mean?
And that's a win-win for both parties.
It is. And it's been uncomfortable for me to learn how to own that a little bit and be able to say, I'm not into that, or not answering a phone call. that I don't feel like answering.
Yeah.
I'm loving that person. They'll get more of me later when I call them back than they will right now in this moment.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still growing in it all the time. But I think I had to learn boundaries a lot too when we were navigating all the OCD stuff, because it was like, there were times where I had to be like, hey, you know, you're struggling today and I can absolutely hold space for that. But like, it's really not my responsibility what you're dealing with right now. And I'm going to go get my nails done and go hang out with people who
aren't going to drain me.
aren't going to drain me right now.
Yeah.
And I love you. And I'm proud of you for this journey you're on. But like, this is your journey today.
That's so mature.
And I'm going to go like hang out with my sister. Or like, I'm going to go to my parents'
When did you
house.
learn that? When was that? During this last
during
5 years?
During the OCD. No, I would say like during the OCD journey, like I had to learn that.
Yeah.
And he.
Were you in therapy at all to navigate any of that?
Not really. I went to his therapist a couple of times because.
To understand him or something? To
understand it. And also the therapist had to tell me like, or the coach that he went to, like he wanted me to hear it from them that the reason he was having anxiety and doubting was because he cared. Which I think is textbook narcissism typically in like situations that don't involve like OCD, which is like a debilitating coping mechanism for anxiety. But, you know, when someone hurts you and they tell you, I'm hurting you because I care or because I love you. Like I've been in toxic relationships where that's what I was told. Like, I'm only hurting you or doing this like because you made me, because I love you. You know what I mean? It's like
a form of manipulation.
Exactly. And I had run into forms of manipulation like that in past relationships. And so like it was a hard pill for me to swallow that like this was happening because he cared, you know? And so I think like talking to his therapist and understanding that it hurt him to think these things. Like he had so much shame. He was sad about it, just as sad as I was.
Yeah.
You know, but it was just like people who struggle with OCD, like they're a victim to their thoughts in a lot of ways. And it's like I think the growth is in being able to put your thoughts in their place and treat them as what they are, which is a thought.
Yeah.
Not a villain.
Yeah. And even if we don't have OCD, like,
I mean, it applies to.
Yeah. And I think it's a good thing to talk about because we don't think about it because we often just because our subconscious is just running the show all the time. Yeah. And we have all these thoughts and then those thoughts create emotions. And it's why we watch a scary movie and we feel scared because our brain doesn't know the difference between the fact that that's not a real threat.
Oh, 100%.
And so I think that it's just good to be aware of the fact that like, oh, I'm having a thought or a feeling, but it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I have to act on it. Maybe I can feel this way right now, and that's okay.
And the beauty of it too is, you know, my husband has reached a place in his healing again where he has a new way of living. Like he did some major work to kind of rewire his brain.
Yeah, it sounds like he's like really
and
done a lot of. And
the thing I love too is like we're best friends. Like we can talk about anything. Like we can talk about the fact that, you know, I remember he used to tell me like, where he said this to me once, he was like, every girl I've ever dated, and he's dated some awesome girls. Like I was telling you, like we talk about each other's exes, like not all the time, but just like
That's
we've had
so
nights
funny.
where we sit down with a glass of tequila and I'm like, so which ex was like your favorite? You know, or like.
And it doesn't make you jealous.
No. And I think that's a songwriter in me to where like, it's like, God bless the broken road that led me straight. Like, I just know that every guy I've ever dated, everything that worked out, every emotion I've ever felt for another person has contributed to who I am and who I was when I met Dylan. And they helped shape and form my understanding of love and relationships up to the point of meeting Dylan, you know? And so it's like, yeah, I want to know about it. Like, I want to know, like, why that relationship didn't work out. I want to know what did work about that relationship. And if for no other reason, it's because we're friends and I want to know about you and I want to know about your life and everything that led you to me. And he's the same way. Like, we're both like just very communicative, inspired people who just like, you know, we can sit there and talk about my ex is just like, we can sit there and talk about his. And we've talked before, like, he told me, he was like, every time I broke up with a girl, I Googled, why am I anxious when I'm in a relationship? And he was like, it wasn't until we broke up and I Googled, why am I always anxious in a relationship, that an article for relationship OCD popped up. Wow. He was like, I've Googled that after every single breakup I've ever had. But my breakup with you was the first time that article popped up. And he's like, that's not a coincidence to me. That the day I get my answer and am given something to explore, like, you're the girl standing in front of me. But like, we've called a spade and said, like, if he had gotten that answer with another girl he was with, he could have ended up with that girl. He dated some good girls and I dated some good guys. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I think like we can just look back on like our past relationships and say like, wow, that was a beautiful moment in time that made you who you are, regardless of how it ended or what happened in it. And all it did was prepare you for the marriage that we're currently in. Like, contributed to our understanding of love and the things that we had to like, the ideas about love that were wrong that we got from other relationships that we kind of had to like redefine, or it's just like, I think both of us see a lot of beauty in that, and it doesn't take away from what we've built and what we've created. Yeah. I mean, even like, this is just funny and like random, but I was at a writer retreat a few weeks ago, and there was like some people at the retreat who were like flirting, like this guy and this girl at the retreat who like totally had a vibe, and it was just like fun. And I remember like my old days of like being at a writer retreat and you have a vibe with like somebody at the retreat, and like everyone else goes to bed and you kind of like make out a little like after everybody else goes to bed, and it's like retreat drama, you know what I mean? And so like I'm telling my husband about it, and he goes, were you kind of like not jealous, but just like reminiscing on like how that used to be fun, like when you were at a retreat? And I was like, I mean, yeah, kind of. Like, I remember those days. They used to be so fun. He was like, yeah, I think about that when I go to like a bar. I just think like, wow, this used to be where I like lived out my fun single days, and it was like so fun. And we were like just both laughing about, number one, there's so much safety in being able to like admit that, as it's like not a weird thing. Like, it's a very human thought and like a very human thing. And so we're like brushing our teeth and we're like talking about it and we're like laughing about it. And then he goes, but I wouldn't change this for anything. And I'm like, yeah, me neither. Trust me. Like, you couldn't pay me to go back to those days. And so I think like we've both embraced this beautiful nuance of like, we can acknowledge the past and say, yeah, that was so much fun. And there is a part of me that now, as a married person, because you're married, you're not dead, goes like, oh, wow, that was so fun. Like, just reminiscing on it and just being like, dang, that was like such a fun time of life. I used to do this and be this way and blah, blah, blah. And then at the same time, be like, but look at this life that we're building. And like, I wouldn't trade that for anything. You couldn't pay me to go back. Yeah. You know?
About marriage,
there's like a beauty in that.
There is a beauty in it. And I think that a lot of people are scared of it because they don't know what's on the other side of being in a marriage, because they're in a relationship. And I feel like I see so many people these days that they've been together 3, 4, 5 years and they're not married yet. but it's almost like, I feel like there's a culture of people being afraid to commit to someone because they're afraid of what's on the other side.
Yeah.
But what's on the other side is so much sweeter than anything.
Oh, yeah.
Previously.
Totally.
And I feel like people need to know that, because for me, I would love to see more young couples that are dating, that are good fits for each other, make the commitment and just say, instead of like waiting for something to go wrong and give them an excuse to, it's like, no, we're going to choose each other, get married. And then when something goes wrong, we're going to have to work through it. And it's going to make our relationship stronger.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think you're speaking to it, because I hear it so much, because you're just like, and it's cool because you're just so stoked on where you're at in your marriage. And your husband sounds like such a cool guy.
He is actually so cool, yeah.
Dylan, D-Y or D-I?
D-Y.
That's what's up.
But even like, and I've told this story before, but it's just like, I'm just thankful I met him. But like, I remember dating a guy before who my ex before him had like a new girlfriend. And I'd just be like in a weird funk about it, even though I was dating this new person who like I cared about. And I
like jealous?
No, not jealous. Just like, oh, wow, he's like dating somebody else. Like you'd see it on Instagram and you'd be like, dang, like it just, you spent years of your life with that person. And it's like, it makes you feel some type of way. It doesn't mean you're like not committed to where you are. It just means like there could be like
you said,
a human feeling in you that arises about that. And the guy I was currently with, I remember being like, you must still be in love with him because you wouldn't be feeling weird about him having a new girlfriend if you didn't still care and like still want to be with him. And I'm like, he's probably right. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, and then it bred this like feeling in me that I couldn't have feelings about anything else outside of my relationship with this person ever. Or like I wasn't committed to them, or I was a bad person, or all this stuff. So anyway, like years later, I'm with Dylan, and that guy who, and I think Dylan and I had been dating for like 2 weeks or something. But that guy who was mad at me for feeling some type of way about
like
my ex having a new girlfriend.
Guy? So that's kind of
he just was like, I think we just brought out the worst in each other, and it was just like a mid-20s like toxic thing. But that guy got engaged, and I saw it on Instagram, and I had been dating my husband for about like 2 weeks, and I had weird feelings about him being engaged, and I didn't want to be with him, and it's not like I missed being in that relationship. It's just like I saw him engaged with somebody else, and in my brain, like I had wondered if I'd be engaged to him someday. And now that's not how life's working out. And if you're just a real human, like you could have like a feeling about that. It's not that you are sad or miss them. It's just like this weird oogie, like, like, okay, like whatever. And I just remember thinking, crap, I'm on my way to Dylan's house right now. Like he's going to be mad that I have this like weird feeling about my ex getting engaged. And so I pulled into this CVS parking lot down the street from Dylan's house because I was like, I'm just going to go into the CVS and like walk it off and just like chill out for a second.
CVS of all places.
Yeah, I'm just going to like stroll, peruse the shelves and just like
thermometer aisle.
Shake this like weird icky feeling I have before I see Dylan because he's going to be mad that I'm like, that I care that my ex just got engaged.
Because you're going to tell him.
Because I'm definitely like can't hide anything, obviously.
Yeah, okay. You wear your heart on your sleeve.
Very much. Yeah. And so anyway, I was like trying to shake it off. I turn a corner in the store and Dylan's standing right there and he's like, what's up? And I'm like, why are you here? And he's like, oh, I knew you were on your way to my house, but I saw your car outside the CVS. So I just figured I'd like catch you in here and we could go over there together. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. And he's like, what's going on? Like, why are you being weird? I'm like, I'm not being weird. What are you talking about? Like, I'm not. And he goes, yeah, you are. You're being like really weird. What's going on? And I was like, okay, don't be mad. And he was like, all right. And he's like, I mean, no, I think he said like, well, I can't promise that, but like, I'm here. Like, what is it? And I was like, so-and-so got engaged. And I saw it on Instagram on like my way to your house. And it just, I don't know, it just made me feel weird. And I'm like bracing myself for his response. And he went, oh yeah, I think that's like a really normal reaction to that. He's like, I've always felt weird when an ex gets engaged. I think it's just like a human thing. He's like, you should just feel that, you'll be fine. And I was like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? So where it was like, and he was like, yeah, okay. Are you ready to go? And I'm like, yeah, let's go to your house. And what it did was it created this feeling of like I wasn't weird for thinking that. And literally as soon as he released me of like this weird expectation I had on myself to feel nothing about that, I felt nothing about it.
Yeah.
It was so weird. Like as soon as he was like, oh yeah, it's super normal to like feel that. You should just like feel that and let it go. It was like, okay, I've let it go. Like almost immediately, I didn't care anymore. You know, it was just like, and he just, every little moment I had with him like that, it built this brick in the wall of what we were building of like trust that I could fully show myself and everything that I was feeling, even if it was hard for him to hear.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And he could do the same with me. And it's just like, I think we both kind of, I wouldn't say a calling, but in a sense it kind of is what we feel like, this calling to like just do our part in our community of like redefining what a friendship and a marriage like can look like. And as far as our generation goes, of just thinking that, you know, you have to feel these things, or like you have to think these things or never think these things, just like normalizing the messiness of relationships and love. And like, at the end of the day, we're just two like separate individual humans coming together to make one life.
Yeah.
And I think like normalizing that and like just
I love that.
Not on like a big
love that
scale,
you're saying
but
that.
I just think like we both feel that. Like he'll hear me telling these stories on this podcast and be like, heck yeah, that's exactly what happened. That's like how it is. You know what I mean? He won't feel any type of way of me talking about an ex on a podcast, or
he'll be proud of you. He'll be proud of you.
He'll be proud of us and like what we've built. And like, we haven't built it to not share it or be that outside of the walls of our house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not perfect by any means, but it's like, we both know that at the end of the day, we've chosen like where we're planting our flag.
I love that.
So
where do you, I have a question, because the 5 year ago, you wouldn't be able to ever predict where you're at right now.
No.
So like to me, for me, same thing. Like my 5 year journaling, I was reading all these like self-help books, Think and Grow Rich, The Secret. It was like, you just think about it and journal about it and believe that it's already exists and it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And then instead of that, it's just like, I got hit by a tsunami, and 5 years later, I'm like, I don't really have control of the outcome at all.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you a question, but I'm hesitant to, because I almost am like, so much can happen just in a year, you know? But where would you like to see yourself in the next 5 years? Like 5 years from now, looking back to now. Mm-hmm. You and Dylan, your family. Mm-hmm. What does that look like for you?
In the next 5 years, I mean, I think building our family is going to be like our focus for the next 5 years. I think I'd love to have 3 to 4 little babies running around in the next 5 years. Yeah. I'm one of 6 kids.
You want to have 6?
No. I'd love to have 4.
Oh, you're one of 6.
I'm one of 6.
Oh, okay.
But we both feel like our family is going to be big.
I like that.
We both want that, and we're open to it, and we've asked for it. So I definitely see a plethora of children running around. Mm-hmm. And as far as like our careers go, I think we're kind of both in a place of like letting go of our career needing to be like the thing we're known for the most, and like our purpose in life. I think we'd love to be on some land and be building a place where our kids like that they grow up in and they know, and then they come back to when they leave the house. And I think like just continuing to like build our marriage. I mean, I don't have any career aspirations in the next 5 years. I will be going to work every day, and I will be taking that journey as it comes. And I'm not taking off from work. Like songwriting is my passion. It's what I do. It's how I communicate with the world. I've built my business to where I can do that every day in the way that I want to do it. And I have a lot of freedom in that. And there's a lot of exciting things happening in my job right now, even that I forget about sometimes because it's genuinely not really what I'm thinking about when I'm not at work. I'm not really thinking about work. Mm-hmm. So we'll both show up to work every day to kind of serve what we're trying to build, which I think right now for us is our family.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
because your identity isn't Emily, just the songwriter.
No,
it's so much deeper than that.
Yeah, it is. Like,
and what I feel like is that in this area and then the music city, it's like everybody's, I don't know what your Instagram bio is, so hopefully I'm not hating on you, but everybody's headline, their billboard on like who they are is not who they are. It's like what they do.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm guilty of that. I think my bio says, I'll read it to you. I'll find it. Mine says, Mrs. Tuscano.
Oh, that's a great way to lead.
With a bride emoji and a groom emoji. And then it says, Nashville. Grammy award-winning songwriter with imposter syndrome. Human, but I have negative blood, so maybe I'm an alien. I don't know.
Oh, I love that.
Because I'm deep in I've been listening to Blurry Creatures. I have a negative blood type, so descendant of the giants. I'm totally kidding. That's like a whole nother podcast.
That's another episode.
Yeah.
Mine says husband, father, people lover, TN plus CA. Because I'm from California. And then it says the Stephan Hogan Podcast, contact. But I feel like I was like husband, I'm a husband, like I love God. But I feel like that's such a cliche to put in my thing. So it's like I'm a husband and a father first before I'm anything else.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like back to it, I feel like there's probably a lot of people that look up to you younger, you know. Do you get a lot of DMs of people asking you questions ever?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Are they a lot of it music related?
I would say a lot of it is music related, and I would say recently I've shared my miscarriage journey online.
And that's connected, huh?
And I put out a song about it. It was like my one and only post artist thing release. And it wasn't about an artist thing. I put it out I just uploaded it like on a Tuesday and posted it once that I had like put it out. But it was just, there weren't many songs about miscarriage that I felt like I could go to when we were going through it. I'm sure they're out there. I didn't have a go-to and one that I felt like. So anyway, one morning I wrote one and I like put it out, but I've shared my heavy metal detox journey and all that. And so lately I've been getting a lot of messages from women who have lost children who have questions about next steps or what tests to get done or my detox journey and, or thanking me for that song or, you know, so I've gotten messages about, I share a lot. So I've shared some of our ROCD journey with Dylan, and I've gotten messages from people who struggle with OCD and didn't even know about it until they had heard me and Dylan talk about it. And then, so, I mean, yes, I do get a lot of messages. I've been off the gram heavily in the last 6 months, just trying to protect
your sanity.
My sanity.
Yeah, Rocky posts for me.
So I've gotten back on it a little bit in the last week, but I'll have a day where I'm like, I don't need this in my life. And
It makes me feel sick.
I'll delete it again.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
Well, I think especially wanting to have a family and going every day you'd get on and I'd be in the detox clinic hooked up to God knows what. And I'd see another person announce their pregnancy or
some perfect little life.
Their fourth kid. And it's and you're which good for them, but just not necessarily what I needed to see in the moment to continue my day with peace. And then on the flip side, I'd be having an actually good, hopeful day where I'm like, okay, it's all going to be good. And then I'd get on and I'd see someone who lost their baby at 9 weeks. And it's the grief would hit me all over again because I'd be empathizing with this stranger who, so I just think in general, I just needed to stop. And with music, someone gets a hit the week after my single got pulled. It's you know what?
Yeah, it's a big comparison game.
My life, comparing my situation to all these other people who I literally don't even know, most of them.
Yeah.
It's just not conducive.
Just seeing some highlight reel of people's perfect whatevers or non-perfect.
It's just not conducive to this new journey of presence and gift, gratitude for the gift that I'm on. So
what would your biggest piece of advice be if you had to give 3 pieces of advice, one to the younger aspiring songwriter, one to the miscarriage DM, and then one to the health side, the well-being side, which would be the OCD and your health for the detox stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there's kind of 3 compartments.
Yeah.
Songwriting, miscarriage, health.
The one piece of advice I'd give to an aspiring songwriter would be to fall in love with the process of writing a song. Because you're not going to win a Grammy every year and you're going to hear no a lot and awards are far and few between or few and far between. Is that what the saying is?
Well, they're far and few and they're few and far.
I mean, and sometimes you have Hall of Fame careers where someone got a lot of hits, but they never got an award, or someone got a lot of awards, but they never got a hit on the radio. And it just, I think, you do have to define what your success is. And I think, but I think what will keep you sustainable in a job this hard, where it is thankless and you do hear no a lot, is just being in love with making music and writing a song. I had to just really fall in love with the process. And that's what keeps me going. That's why I wake up and still go to work, because I love the process of writing a song. I've fallen in love with that. I'm not in love with winning awards. It's nice when it happens, but it's not why I get up every day and work.
Yeah.
And
do you know Jason Nix?
I don't know.
He's a
if
writer.
I do.
He wrote what was Lainey Wilson's?
What a Man Ought to Know.
Yeah, What a Man Ought to Know.
I love that song.
Yeah. But he was on the podcast. Or no, I was talking to him when I was in the hospital, right before my dad passed. And I was thinking about my journey and the accolades and how my dad never got to see me accomplish some big thing that I had set out to accomplish since I was 5.
Yeah.
But then I was my dad got to see me be a husband and a dad. And and that's like more rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
And Jason DM'd me, and he has a son, and he was like, yeah, man, that's what it's all about. Like,
yeah.
And he said accolades are like whatever. Like, and I said, what's on the other side of accolades? And he said,
anxiety.
He said a box of shit that your family inherits that they have to deal with.
Oh, so
and
true.
I thought it was cool because it was like really puts in perspective what matters, you know?
Yeah.
Because awards are far and few, or few and far.
I don't know. Few and far, far and few.
And it's like it's not the definition of who you are is how many awards you get, and music's not a competition.
No. And also, you don't remember who won what last year.
No.
It's just like you remember a song.
Something that'll collect dust. But it's still cool and affirming, and I mean it is
cool
beautiful.
And affirming. But like every award I've ever won just gave me bad anxiety that it wasn't going to happen again, and that now I had to like live up to this award I just won.
Or like get another.
Yeah. Or that I won't get another. Like I like I said, I get up every day. The reason I've been able to do this job for 11 years now, and I'm not tired of it yet. I'll be able to do it for 11 more, even though it's some of the most thankless, grueling work. And I think a lot of people could say that about their jobs. I'm not just like saying songwriter's the only place, but you get up every day and you play the lottery for a living. Literally, you hear no every day. You're rejected every day. And it's not like the work you did is rejected. It's like your work is your soul. It's your brain. It's your heart in a song and on paper. So when someone says no to it, they're saying no to like a piece of your soul. It's like, that could wear on a human.
Yeah.
I mean, this job drives people actually mentally insane.
Yeah.
You know? And so the only way that you can do it for a long time is if you're in love with the right part of it.
Mm. Yeah. I think you said the love of it.
The love of the process of writing.
The love of the process, not writing songs for money.
Yeah. I think that's probably my biggest piece of advice for someone trying to get into the music business. Just make sure you're in love with the right parts of it.
That's really good advice. What about for mothers who, I'm sure you've given a lot of advice on this.
I don't know if I have advice as much as just empathy and compassion.
What would you tell, like if there was a duplicate Emily right here, what would you tell her about the miscarriage stuff?
I mean,
like on compassion level.
I think I would just hug her.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I have advice. I mean,
you would love her and hug her?
I would just hold her and hug her and love her and be with her, I think. I mean, there's not much you can like say to someone. I mean, the grief of a miscarriage is a very weird grief. And I've said this before, but there's no body to bury. There's no memories that you have with that person. You don't even know their names sometimes or their gender sometimes. But the loss of a baby it's like my soul. I've said this, I think I said it on another podcast once, but it's just so true. And I go back to it. It's like my soul, my spirit grieved it more than my brain did.
Because there was a spirit in you of a human. Yeah.
And my spirit was connected to that spirit in a way that my brain couldn't even like process yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you know, when you lose like a person, like the only other person I've really lost in my life is my grandma. And again, that goes back to like how blessed I am and how I felt like a little twerp sometimes complaining to God about, why do you keep taking babies from me? When it's like, but look at all the people I do have in my life. Like I have both of my parents. I have both of my grandparents on my on my mom's side, you know, I never got to meet my grandpa on my dad's side, but when we lost my grandma, she was 93, like 92 or 93. And I remember being at her funeral and there's like 80 people there who all had experiences with my grandma and loved my grandma and knew my grandma. And you're all there grieving together. And you're like celebrating her life together. And you all have memories and it's just a weight that you're all bearing together. And when you lose a baby, it's such a personal loss. Like even your husband doesn't get it. You can have the most supportive partner in the world, but like you're the only one grieving to the level that you're grieving. It's such an isolating grief because even my husband, who's so supportive and like so there for me, I remember he told me once, he was like, I'm 20% sad we lost the baby. I'm 80% sad seeing you this sad. And I'm like, well, I'm 100% sad we lost the baby. You know? So it's like, he almost had to put his sadness on the back burner to let me be sad, you know? Because it's just like, I think men in that situation don't always know how to be. It's like it's weird for them in like a different way, you know? And so it's like, it's just such an isolating, lonely grief. There's nothing anyone can say to you. There's no sense in it. People say, oh, God's timing. God keeps his promises. You'll be a mama when it's like the right time. And someday you'll look at the baby that you do have and you won't be able to imagine having another kid. And all of those things are true. But none of them make the isolating, lonely, heavy weight of grief that losing a pregnancy is any better.
In fact, I would argue worse.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, okay, so are you saying I shouldn't be upset? Are you saying I shouldn't be sad? And I know that people mean well. I mean, what do you say I think what I've learned from grief is that I think what I needed the most was just for people to be there. I didn't need them to like make me feel better. Nothing was going to make me feel better.
Yeah.
And I think that's made me better with, you know, if my sister, even this is little, but if my sister's having a bad day.
It's not trying to fix the problem.
I don't have to fix her problem.
Yeah.
And nothing I say is going to fix
the
sadness she's feeling about XYZ, you know?
Yeah.
But the best thing I can do for her is be there for her, bring her a meal. I mean, I remember like my first miscarriage, I told my friend, and 30 minutes later, there was a tray of enchiladas on my front porch. And I was like, I didn't even think about dinner. You know what I mean? And it's just like, I think you don't know to do those things until you've, like people don't, and who are grieving don't really know what they need.
Yeah.
They just like know that they are feeling the worst pain they've ever felt in their life. And they just need people to show up. They don't, and it doesn't mean I'm like F you to everyone who said something encouraging to me. No, you know what I mean? But it's just
coming
like
across that way.
No, but I think like, I just don't know that I have any advice.
That's okay.
Except like that your loss mattered. And I think sometimes women who have miscarriages don't feel like they're allowed to be that sad because it wasn't even like, they never even got to know that person. Like they feel stupid almost for being sad about this person that nobody else knew.
Yeah.
Or like they didn't know. So I think I don't really have like advice. I do have like more advice on the health detox front.
Yeah,
because I do think that when the grief cleared, or just when you get to, you just have to feel it. But then I think you do have to take some action steps. And it's like a story for another day, so I won't get into it. But you know, my husband came to me right before we lost our third baby, and he told me, he was like, I feel like God told me we're going to lose this baby. And I remember being like, freaking out. And he said this to me a week before he lost the baby. And I just remember freaking out. And you have to know that my husband's not this like over spiritual guy who's always claiming God's talking to him. For my husband to say, I feel like God told me this is a big deal. I don't think I've actually ever heard him say that since we've been married, you know? He's very, very like, just not, it's not something that he just says. But he just felt in some ways that, again, I could talk about another time, that God showed him the number 3. And it kept popping up in some different ways. And he said, I feel like God said 3 and then no more after that. He's promised me, like, we'll only lose 3. He was like, but I don't think that promise comes without cooperation. And so we need to figure out like what's going on. And so I went to my doctor after the 3rd loss and I got all these tests. If I could go back, I would have gotten all those tests after the 2nd loss or maybe even after the 1st. I think one of the biggest things I've learned from that is that you have to advocate for yourself and your own health. My doctor prescribed me thyroid medication, didn't look into the fact that my thyroid antibodies were elevated and that meant that I had an autoimmune issue. He just gave me thyroid medication and said, this should help your next pregnancy, which I'm not dissing on my doctor. I have a really good doctor and that's how he was trained. But I learned that for me I had to be the advocate of my own health. I can't trust my doctor at the end of the day to care about my health as much as I'm going to care about my health. So I had to go to, some holistic doctors and get some deeper testing done and find out what was actually going on with my body.
Was it a functional medicine? Functional?
Yeah. I kind of went the functional medicine route.
I went to the Maxwell Clinic in Brentwood. Have you heard of that?
I haven't heard of that. That's not the one I went to. But
there's a lot of those places popping up because people are understanding.
100%.
100%. You can't throw a pill at everything.
Yeah. Just being on thyroid medication, what it done is like mask the actual issue, which was that I had heavy metals in my body that were binding to my hormones. And my brain started thinking that my hormones were heavy metals. So when I'd get pregnant, I'd have a surge of hormone and my brain would think I was having a surge of lead poisoning and it would detox it for me. Oh. And that's why I kept losing babies. So I had to go to a detox clinic, have a heavy metal detox, and then retrain my brain to recognize hormone as a good thing. And that's why my brain was telling my immune system to attack my thyroid because it thought my thyroid was producing heavy metals instead of hormone.
It was under attack.
Yeah. So I had to do my own research. I had to advocate for myself. I couldn't just trust my doctor to find that out. And in fact, like I ended up telling my doctor, what I found out. And he was like, okay, great, whatever works. Like wasn't overly interested. And I'm not mad at him for that. That's just how he's trained. And he works with hundreds and probably thousands of women who are dealing with he deals with this stuff every day. He's a great doctor. But I think like the other thing is like they wouldn't even test me for what could be wrong until I lost 3 babies. And I remember after my second one saying, can I get some tests done? And he said, we usually don't do that till a woman's had 3 or 4. And knowing what I know now, I would have demanded testing after my first one and just saved myself the grief of the next 2. Granted, like I get to meet those 2 babies in heaven. I fully believe that. And I'm happy I have 3 babies waiting for me there. But my point is like, we are in charge of our own health. And so I think my biggest piece of advice is to advocate for yourself and not necessarily rely on your doctor for like all the answers. Get second opinions, find functional medicine, holistic doctors who are willing to do some like deeper digging on like a cellular level to figure out what's going on and don't just throw medicine at everything.
Yeah.
I think medicine is so wonderful and like very beneficial to people who need it and choose to use it. Like I'm absolutely. But yeah, I would say advocating for yourself and your own health is probably my biggest piece of advice on the health detox front.
Yeah.
Like get some real answers, because whatever's in your body is going to end up in your baby's body.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful that we found out what was going on, because when I do have my babies, like they're going to have a mom who is in remission from her autoimmune disease.
Yeah, baby.
And isn't having fatigue at 3 p.m. every day, or, being unable to go work out, or not getting good sleep, or like all the havoc it was wreaking on my, like stress, high cortisol, like all the havoc it was wreaking on my body. And, someday, who knows that, having metals in my system, like to the level where it was messing with my body that bad, could have saved me from MS or cancer or heart disease, or, it's just like, they're going to have a well mom.
Yeah.
And that's what I want for my kids. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's a great piece of advice to end on, because, again, like our health, back to if it's mental or physical.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people, like on the mental end, they don't think of it as a physical.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's that stigma still. And I talked to my psychiatrist about this the other day, because I went to a place called the Amen Clinic. I don't know if you've heard of it, but they do brain scans. I did 2 days of brain scans, and Daniel Amen's done a lot of really cool work. But I was like telling him, like, hey man, like I feel guilty for like having to take medicine for like my brain or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But he was like, if you had a like first we tried the holistic route, and I tried doing all supplementation, because that's their whole goal.
Yeah.
And that didn't work. And so we went with the Western medicine, So like I'm pro both, like you are.
Yeah.
And but he's like, dude, if it was, anything else, like if it was your knee or whatever, like you would have to address it. And it's not a forever thing. But since your brain scans show that you have PTSD, we need to get this calm and get your trauma figured out before we can taper off the medicine.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where it's like not bad, but at the same time, like the health thing for me was, I finally did it. And I'm so glad I did, because it's made me more functional than I've ever been.
Oh, yeah.
Even though I have a guilt around it, because I feel guilty for having to take medicine to feel normal.
Oh, I'm on a thyroid medication right now. And I remember I had like major pride issues about being on a thyroid medication. Granted, I'm on a pretty low dose of it, like the lowest dose you can be on. But when I was doing the detox stuff, I was like, can I get off the medicine? And I remember her telling me like, look, some people do need medicine. Like their body's not making enough thyroid hormone, and it just is what it is. And so we supplement it with the medicine. She was like, you may be someone who just needs it, and there's no shame in that, and it's okay. She was like, but you may be someone where we heal the root cause of your autoimmune issue, and then we can get you off of the medicine. She goes, we won't know till we start down the path of healing. But I remember her telling me, regardless, as we detox and as you try to get pregnant again and have a baby, I want you on the medication. She said, because your body is going to work so hard to detox. I don't want it to be any more stressed out than it already is. So kind of what you're saying about your medication. She was like, as we heal your body naturally, I want to use the medication to support your body as we do that, so that on the back end, we can hopefully take you off of the medicine once your body's strong enough in other areas to be able to like run without it.
Yeah, and it helps you have some grace on yourself too.
It does. It really does. And I'm on it. I take it every morning. And it's...
Yeah. Is it pride, do you think, or is it like embarrassment? Or does embarrassment, like I feel embarrassed?
Yeah, for me, I think that kind of went hand in hand. I remember my mom saying, oh, your grandma's on that medication. And I'm like, my 86-year-old grandma, I'm 30 years old. I'm going to be on a medication my grandma's on. And I remember calling my grandma like, Grandma, they're putting me on this medication that you're on. It made me feel just like not healthy.
Yeah, like broken. Or
like
something.
Broken or old or like, what do you mean I have to be on medication? Like, yeah, it was like an ego, weird pride, embarrassment thing.
Yeah, I get that.
And I remember my grandma being like, oh yeah, they put me on it when I was 25. I've been on it since I was 25. And that made me feel a little better. But at the same time, I was like, wow. And then that's when she told me like, yeah, when I first started, I was on like 15 milligrams or something like that. She goes, but now my dose is like 115, like 100 and something. And I just remember like, wow. And that's where I go, like, I'd love to get off of it if I can. Cause medicine, I mean, it does make you dependent on more medicine, I think is kind of tends to be a byproduct of just being on it for a long time. And so like, you know, I would love to get off of it before my body becomes like completely reliant on it. But
at the end of the day, it's whatever it takes.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with me being on it.
No.
Like for my whole life, if it's something that my body needs.
Yeah.
And that's the best way to provide it. Like, and I think that's where the advocation comes in, is like understanding on a deeper level what's going on with your body so that you can make an educated decision about what you want to do and like what you value.
Yeah.
When it comes to your health, you know?
Health is wealth.
Yeah. Even my husband was on anxiety medication for a few months and he was like, it numbed the lows, but it numbs the highs too. And he just decided that he's all for it for people who want to be on it and stay on it. But for him, it just wasn't what he wanted. And so he found some other ways to find some healing in that department.
Yeah.
And I think he's really grateful for his life that he did that. But I think for people who need anxiety medication or depression medication, like there are people who like, it really does benefit them to be on it. And so we're all for that.
The biggest thing because I've gone through so much of that mental health stuff, modern psychiatry, if we were just to go with like insurance and your husband went and saw a psychiatrist, they would sit down with him, ask him what his symptoms are, and then they would prescribe him medicine like an SSRI. I think that's what Zoloft is.
Yeah.
But there's so many variables outside of, like you said, you did blood work. Yeah. And they're like, we don't do this till after the third. And our modern psychiatry is so behind, just like so many other things on the health level. But one of the biggest things is genetic testing when it comes to medicine, which I found out and I did it. But it was crazy because SSRIs always made me like super depressed and like did the opposite. Yeah. But it's like they're just throwing darts at the wall on medicines, hoping that one like works and helps you. Yeah. And so I would suggest for people listening, like talk to your psychiatrist about the genetic testing. It's just like a swab. And then it'll show them what medicines your body, like your genetics work with. And I did that and that was super helpful. Yeah. So there's a lot of like things out there that like psychiatry has that they can do to help, but we're unaware of them. So we can't advocate for ourselves. But I think the genetic testing for medicine is really important if you're going to take it. Yeah. I just thought I'd throw that out there for anybody that is struggling with that stuff. Cause I had to do it for my Amen Clinic thing. And the Amen Clinic's an awesome place to look into for people struggling with mental health or ADHD or anything. They've done 300,000 brain scans. Daniel Amen's Justin Bieber's psychiatrist. Yeah. And he's in LA, but they have, and Miley Cyrus, like a bunch of celebrities. Yeah. So he doesn't take patients, but all the doctors are trained by him. And their approach to mental health is really cool. But that's awesome. Like exposure therapy, like all that stuff that Dylan's done is really important. And we have to be proactive. That's a big thing. I think that too often it's like we want a pill to fix our problems versus like investing in our health. We'll spend money on other things, but it's like when it comes to our health, like how much money do we like really invest into our selves? So I'm so on board with that. And I hope more people do that. And I think more people are. I think like Andrew Huberman and some of the people that we see.
Gary Brecka, like you have all
Gary
these
Brecka.
like.
I was watching him last night, listening to him.
We watch all that stuff.
And those guys are really like changing the game. Like I was just learning from Gary Brecka about methylation.
Yeah, I have that MTHFR.
Yeah, I just started taking it. I feel like I have more energy. I don't know if I have the genetic. I haven't done the testing.
I did the test after my babies, and I have it homozygous.
You do?
I have it from both parents, so it definitely like affects me. So I stay the frick away from folic acid, and I'm on a methylated folate.
Yeah. Is it 15 milligrams or 5?
You know what? I don't totally know exactly what it is.
It's like I forget what the...
MTHFR.
Yeah, that's what the bottle says. But my psychiatrist said it wouldn't hurt me to take it, but I want to do the testing. How do you do it?
Well, I did it you just ask a doctor, functional medicine doctor for it, but my doctor tested me for MTHFR when I did all the...
Like your primary care?
The pregnancy testing. My OBG.
Oh, okay. So
he tested me for that because they call it the motherfucker gene.
Oh, really?
MTHFR, motherfucker.
Yeah,
because folic acid is like one of the main, like folic acid is one of the main things a baby needs to develop in the womb. So when you're taking the synthetic form of folate, which is folic acid, your body can't convert it, and then your baby doesn't get it. So you have to be on a methylated folate for your body to be able to use it when you're pregnant, when you have MTHFR.
Yeah, supplementation's so big.
Yeah, I don't totally know like the whole science behind it. So like, sorry if I got that a little wrong, but it's
you can go research it.
I think everyone should. I mean, I'm kind of to a point where I'm like, whether you have MTHFR or not, I'm just kind of like a purist these days when it comes to...
Do you do the ionized water? I have one of the water bottles over there. Gary Brecka's all about it.
I haven't gotten into it yet. I know Topher was telling me he was going to get a hydrogen.
Oh, that's what it is.
Water bottle. Yeah. I haven't gotten into it yet, but it's my next move. I just got a red light. So...
Oh, you did?
I'm into like my red light therapy. And
the chiropractor I go to has a full bed, red light therapy bed.
Red light, like everything.
Yeah. Do you like hold it on like different parts of your body, or is it a full
My husband
bed?
got me one for Christmas. It's like a wrap.
Panel?
So I can like wrap it and like just kind of has Velcro, and I can it covers like big parts of the body at one time. So
that's cool.
Do like my liver or my torso or my uterus, or I'll red light my thyroid sometimes and like just put it around my neck. It's just kind of.
Do you guys work out together? You and your husband?
We've gone through, he's a like ex-D1 athlete, like very fit boy. We went to this boot camp together for a while. And then when I got diagnosed with all the thyroid stuff, they told me to quit, to like cancel all my boot camp memberships, because they basically said that my body was in such a stressful, like inflamed condition that hard workouts were only making the stress on my body worse. So it was actually like not helping me lose weight. Like I had gained a bunch of weight that I couldn't lose. And that hard workouts were actually working against me because my body was so inflamed that it was just making it worse. So they put me on like a walking, yoga, Pilates regimen, basically, where I could only do like low impact stuff as my body was kind of healing and detoxing.
Did you have to do a bunch of diet change?
I went gluten-free, dairy-free, and refined sugar-free. But I mean, the biggest change for me was dairy, I would say.
Interesting.
And
I'm gluten-free.
I've stayed gluten-free mostly. The only time
your gut health has improved probably dramatically.
I had leaky gut.
I did
candida. Like I had all kinds of issues, but yeah, I mean, also like healing, it's not like a linear thing. It's definitely like a journey, you know, and you're not going to be perfect all the time. And I think that's another thing. Like, I think the stress of trying to be perfect can work against you too.
Yeah.
So I've just had to like trust that my best is enough, and also try to live a little every once in a while. But I've stayed mostly gluten-free. I just, if I do eat gluten, I try to make sure that the flour is not enriched with like folic acid, and
try to get it from Italy.
Just because of the MTHFR thing, I just try to stay away from Yeah. So like if I'm at a restaurant, I don't typically order gluten at a restaurant because I just never know what they're using.
Yeah.
But like if I know what's in it and it's good flour and it's not like enriched, then I'll rock a little gluten here and there. I just, you just have to do your best.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to see what happens with our food. With RFK. Yeah, with RFK. Because I think that
I'm definitely like
I'm
interested in what he can
get things a little more on track with some of the other countries.
As someone who had a mental problem, I mean, even there's lead in tampons. I had to stop using tampons.
Yeah, my wife just stopped using tampons.
Yeah, because there's lead in them. Why are we putting lead in freaking women's hygiene tampons? That's freaking crazy. And so it was refreshing for me to hear someone in politics talking about wellness in that way.
Yeah. I've watched a lot of interviews with him too, podcasts with him. Yeah. And his heart is just filled with wanting to have people healthy.
Yeah.
And like me having a 2-year-old, I'm like, I want this kid to grow up in a healthy world. That's
the other thing. We've been on the baby train and all that, and you start really thinking about like, oh, like I don't think that much about what I put in my body. I mean, now I do, but you spend your life kind of not really thinking about it. And then when you're in charge of putting food in someone else's mouth that you love like that, it's like you start paying more attention, and it definitely, it challenges you. So
yeah, it does.
And we're not really even in the trenches of that yet. It's just like already like
it's one thing at a time, like you just said. It's one thing at a time.
Yeah.
I think that like for me, I mean, I'll be praying for you and Dylan and your family, because I feel like it's cool that I just see a lot of parallels between where your life's at, where my life's at, and me and my wife. And some of the things that we've gone through, and it sounds like you've gone through a lot of that same stuff. But be praying for that next 5 years.
Thank you.
Vision of you and your family, and really making that the priority. And I think it's important for us all to understand that relationships are the bedrock to life. And as my dad was passing away recently, at the end, he was making all these like phone calls and video calls to the people that he loved. And it was not about, anything that he accomplished or money or any of that stuff. And at the end of your life, it's just like, it's the people you loved, and it's the relationships you have. And I appreciate you sharing
Thanks
so
for
much
having
of your
me
story.
And letting me cry like the whole time. That was like not what I was planning on doing today, but
no, I started getting teary-eyed from you. I held it in, but I was getting some moisture.
One single man tear about to drip out.
No, I cried in the shower this morning. So I've been crying a lot, but it's okay to cry.
It's great to cry.
Yeah. You should do a closer like, I'm Emily Weisband. and that was, this is a wrap.
I'm Emily Weisband Tuscano, and this is a wrap.
Oh yeah, because you're not going by you're going by your maiden name still.
So at work, I've just built my writing career as Emily Weisband, and so it's just easier for. It's on all my LLCs. It's on any plaque I have says Emily Weisband. It's just like kind of what I've built my career under. But I've legally changed my name to Emily Tuscano. I dropped the Weisband like completely.
So that's what your license says. So
my license is Emily Lynn Tuscano. And at the PTA meetings, I'll be known as Mrs. Tuscano.
Oh, what's up?
But at work, I'm just Emily Weisband. And to be honest, like, it's really helped my identity issue with work a little bit. Because I think, like, my identity has always been so wrapped up in, like, my job. And so I think, like, it was kind of this weird symbolic way of me, like,
closing a chapter.
Separating my work from the life I'm actually really interested in building and being what I'm really interested in kind of being known for.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like I go to work and I do the Emily Weisband thing, and then I get to kind of like.
Then you're Mrs. Tuscano.
Yeah, I get to kind of like disconnect from that genuinely and fully
That's
live
awesome.
my life outside of work. Like I like having a new identity like attached to that.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I would just kind of feel like I'm muddying up my new name, like attaching it to work. I don't know.
I get that. I
like the separation of it, and
yeah.
So it's just kind of like.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for sharing your journey, your story.
Thank you so much for having me, and it was fun.
It was.
Appreciate it.
And that's a wrap on today's episode with Emily Weisband Tuscano. She is just something else of a person. My friend told me that she's the best, and she really was. I mean, she opened up and was so vulnerable on this podcast. Her story is pretty gnarly. It's crazy. And I never want to like try to like make it about me and my story, but I just saw so much of like myself and what she was talking about. And hopefully you maybe saw some of yourself in some of those struggles and the triumphs that she has overcome, and the health and taking care of yourself and some of those really important things. This podcast is not just a music podcast. It's about becoming a better human being, growing, learning. If you dig it, please hit a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, review on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube. And until next episode, do something kind for someone, like buy someone a coffee this week, because we need to spread love in a world that's so freaking divided. Love you guys, and I'll see you next week. Peace.
This is the Stephan Hogan Podcast.